بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الخلق وسيد المرسلين سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم أجمعين. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. Welcome to the rise of the novel. Now we are well into the novel itself. We spent much time talking about the background information that led to the rise of the novel. We understood how people led their lives before the 18th century and the changes that took place after the start of the 18th century and the large differences that we can notice about the lives of people and also about the literature of people in the 18th century, differences between the 18th century and the 17th century. Those elements and those factors contributed to the rise of the novel. We studied many of them, and last lecture and the lecture before we tried as much as possible to see how those elements exist, how they are applied to Robinson Crusoe by Daniel Defoe. We also tried to see how the various characteristics of the novel in the 18th century, which is the age of the rise of the novel, how these characteristics can also appear in our study of Robinson Crusoe by Daniel Defoe. The purpose of the background lectures is twofold or threefold. It has many purposes actually. It helps us to understand the age, the writer, the novel in general, and it also prepares us for a study of the novel itself. So when you come to reading or an examination of the novel, you understand it very well, or at least you understand the major contours and major lines of thought, and you can follow and you can have the critical eye that could help you to understand the novel very much. This is what I tried to do with you, and this is what I said in my first live lecture. I missed you there, nobody showed in. I hope you show up next time, inshallah. This is lecture number 10. We are approaching the end of the course. I wish we can cover about 3 chapters this lecture, inshallah. As you can see, we will be dealing with the PowerPoint presentation explaining some points of interest to the novel in general and to Robinson Crusoe in particular. We will also go through the novel itself in order to read some passages. I repeat, I do not want you to bother with the text, which is very long. Though it is easy to read, it is interesting to read, but I know that you don't have the time and the effort necessary to finish the novel from cover to cover. I'm not going to ask you questions that require you to know the minute details of the novel, but I will ask you general questions, things that you can easily grasp if you look at a summary of the novel and add the various pages of the novel together. You can go through it quickly rather than translating word by word or page by page. You might as well concentrate on the major events, the major characters, the major themes. These are the things that are interesting and that are important. I will show you how. Before we get into chapter 8, we finished 7 chapters before, let us have this remark. On page 104 in the novel, okay, Robinson gives us a picture of how he came to an understanding of his life on the island. The island is quite new, and he is still a young man, and there is nobody else there with him to help him understand the life on the island, the animals, the wildlife, the natural phenomena like rains, earthquakes, volcanoes, hurricanes, all such emblems of nature and life on the island have taken him much time in order for him to understand. So there is a picture of that life and how he came to an understanding of it. Plus, he reasons with himself in a very clear-cut way, putting the evil aspects of his life against the good aspects. He reasons with himself because he's alone and there is nobody else around him to help him understand. In the past, there was his father and there were his friends, but he didn't listen, as we saw. He didn't listen to any of them. He listened only to his own voice and to his own consciousness. He wanted that kind of adventurous, risky life, a life of travel, of adventures, of surprises, of interesting things, exotic life, exotic people, and so on. It takes time to understand that life, and in order to understand himself more and understand that life much more, he creates a sort of a table in which he weighs the good things and the bad things. This is good, this is bad. Look, I'm summing up my life. This is the good things in my life, and these are the evil things. Let us see that in the novel itself. Okay? That, as I said, is page 104. Yes. Please try to look here and to concentrate. He says, the comforts I enjoyed against the miseries. I said the evil against the good. The comforts against the miseries. I suffered thus. The things that I passed through are there like this. I will give you one or two examples. One, he spent some time hesitating, and he was sad that he is left alone. He was sad that he might die. He was sad that he is not religious. And then he became happy, and so on. His life changes from one state to another. To put himself at ease and to rest and to be comfortable, he invents this method in the novel, where we can read evil first and then good. Evil and good, evil and good. You see? Evil and good. What is evil for him, as far as he can see? What is the evil is that I'm cast upon a horrible, desolate island. I'm alone on the island, void of all hope of recovery, and there is no hope that I might go back to my country. What is good against this is that I'm alive. I'm not drowned, as all my ship's company were. We understand that all other people on the ship have been shipwrecked and drowned, and he is alone, the only survivor. I am alive. Okay, so one point counters another. For being desolate and alone on the island, he is the only survivor. So this is drawn. Another evil point is that I'm singled out and separated, as it were, from all the world to be miserable. Actually, nobody singled him, nobody made him miserable. He is the one who insisted on this kind of life, but he now contradicts himself by saying that I am miserable because I am, separated or singled out from the whole world, left as if someone took him by force from England and put him on the island, but this is not, of course, true. He says, he replies to himself, I'm singled out too from all the ship's crew to be spared from death. If I'm singled out to be alive on the island, I'm singled out also from all the ship's people who have been drowned, and I avoided death, or I was spared death. And he that miraculously saved me from death can deliver me from this condition. Now he's talking about what? About Allah, about God. He here, the capital H in front of you, refers to the Creator, the Almighty, subhanahu wa ta'ala. He says that against this I have this. Evil, I'm divided from mankind, I'm a solitaire, I'm banished from human society, but I am not starved, I'm perishing on. So he is stabilizing himself. He is trying to say, I can take care of myself, I can live more on the island, I can survive more and more with this understanding. I know that bad things have taken place, but of course there are also good things, and the major thing about that is that I am still alive. Okay? So there is a lot of hesitation inside him, and he puts an end to that hesitation by arguing with himself or reasoning with himself in this way. This means, let us understand the last slide again. It means that Robinson gains experience with age and adventures. In the past, when his parents wanted him to stay at home, he didn't listen, he didn't obey. And now we see that he can arrive at wisdom, arrive at more understanding of the world and of himself. So he reasons with himself, and he gains experience with age and adventures. He hesitates between good and evil, and this will continue with him later. This is not the only or the last example in which we see Robinson Crusoe hesitating and oscillating like that. There is a conflict inside him all the time. There are two voices inside Robinson, one telling him to obey reason and the other to obey emotion. There are two voices inside him, the voice of reason and the voice of the heart. The writer is interested in facts and data to make his novel achieve verisimilitude. Let us stay on this point for a while. The writer is interested in facts and data to make his novel achieve verisimilitude. If you look at that part of the novel again, you will see the good against the evil, the good against the evil points. You know, it seems to be this seems to be a factual description of the life of Robinson Crusoe. He builds on facts. He gives us facts and data in front of us. There is no emotion here, there is no feeling, there is no sentiment. It is hard and fast factual description. This is what we have in this part, and it is far from fictional. It is not recommended in the novel to have these tables or data or graphic exemplification, you see. But anyway, this is a novel in the age of the rise of the novel, and we have to deal with it and with its weaknesses and disadvantages. Let us go on now to chapter 8. You will find some differences between the chapter numbers and the titles. Just go there in the book itself that I have supplied you with. You can click on this. You will find the chapters like so. These are chapter numbers like this: chapter 1, chapter 2, chapter 3. For example, you may not find a whole chapter talking about the journal, but if you look here, first week on the island, you will find first weeks on the island, builds a house, and then the journal. This is chapter 5, but there are different versions of the novel, different editions. When I say the journal, then you look into the novel, into the book for the journal. Okay? The journal. So forget about the chapter number. You will notice that after a while, after one lecture or so, I'm going to jump, because I do not plan in this course to explain every chapter of the novel. I'm just giving you general guidelines to help you understand the novel. In this part of the novel, where we have a journal is like, you know, a record, a registry, something in which he registers or writes down what happens to him every day and every hour. He keeps it, as we said before, in order to remember everything that happens, because every day there is something new. And in order not to forget, and in order for other people to learn by this experience in front of us, he chose that journal. And if we talk about the writer himself and his use of the journal, and that was a popular method in that age, the age of the rise of the novel, letters inserted into the novel, journals inserted into the novel, tables as this, evil, good, evil, good, evil, good, also made use of in the novel itself. All such matters were attempts by the writer to do what? To make the novel look realistic, to make the novel look realistic and to achieve verisimilitude. Do you understand? Plus, something very important, it was one way in which writers avoided censorship. They said, this is not a novel, it's just a journal. Do you understand? Avoiding censorship and punishment and disapproval of publication by making of their writings books about journals or about adventures rather than books about fiction. In that section, Crusoe keeps a journal for a while. Notice, for a while. That is to say, he's not going to continue that journal, because a journal needs pens or ink. And once the ink ends with him, once it is no longer available, he will stop the journal willy-nilly. He keeps a journal for a while, beginning with an entry. So there is a question here. Why does he keep it for a while? Why doesn't he continue it? Because he gets busy. This is one. He loses interest, and there is no ink after some time. Beginning with an entry dated September the 30th, 1659. I repeat, the date is not real. He goes back in memory to a previous century, the 17th century, while the novel, of course, talks about England in the 18th century. He begins his account of life on the island of despair. He calls it the island of despair, as he calls it. Though he has just told us that there is hope, because he's the only one who survived. He proceeds to narrate events that have already been narrated. In this part, which is the journal, we read again what he has said. He has described all such matters before, and when he invents the journal, he keeps talking about that once more. So there is, of course, repetition. He proceeds to narrate events that have already been narrated, his discovery, like his discovery of the ship's remains, his salvaging of provisions, the storm that destroys the ship entirely, the construction of his house. You see, day-to-day, everyday concerns in which he looks for shelter and protection. He notes that he has lost track of which day is Sunday, and he is thus unable to keep the Sabbath religiously. He records the building of various pieces of furniture and tools. He tames his first goat. All such matters, you know, are concrete things, material things, things that help him to survive on the island, like taming the goat, having furniture, constructing or building his house, you know. And religion, as far as religion is concerned, he forgets Sunday. He remembers Sunday and remembers prayers on Sunday, being Christian, but then after a while he forgets that. Okay, this is in chapter 8. Questions here. Why does he keep a journal? To make the novel realistic, to achieve verisimilitude, to avoid forgetting the events that he has on the novel, on the island. Why does he call the island of despair? You know, he is by nature pessimistic. By nature, like everybody else in that century, he didn't have much hope. And in the novel, he always tells us that he has been destined, doomed, fated, do you understand? And that he has been, like here, he has been singled out. We have just said that he has been taken away from England and thrown into that island. This is what he believes. So he sees no hope for recovery, in the words of Robinson Crusoe, no hopes of returning back to England. So there is despair. He doesn't know when or how he would come back to his own home country. Can he keep the journal for long? Of course not. He is not going to keep it for long, as I said, because for one thing he is going to forget, he is going to lose interest, and he is going to finish the amount of ink that he found on the ship. Okay? Why does he stop it later? Because of these three things. So these two questions are quite similar. Commentary on the journal. His journal provides little interesting new information. There is nothing new. He says the same thing, he repeats himself. It does offer insights, however, about his character, especially his conception of his own identity. It tells us, when you read the journal, like if you go to it here, the journal, yes, the journal. He builds the house and then he starts the journal, starting here September the 30th, 1659. I, poor miserable Robinson Crusoe, being shipwrecked during a dreadful storm in the offing, came on shore on this dismal, unfortunate island, which I call the island of despair, all the rest of the ship's company being drowned, and I myself almost dead. Understand? He repeats the pronoun I, talking about himself, like this. He talks about himself all the time. There is nobody else except him. And then another entry in the journal, October. I did such and such. I, all the time. I hoped, I get, I might get. Through these items in the journal, we understand his character much more rather than just reading what he says about himself. The journal provides us with some insight into the character of Robinson Crusoe. He introduces himself as poor, as we have just read, poor miserable Robinson Crusoe, which strikes a startling note of self-pity that contradicts the sturdy, resourceful self-image of his narrative. He says he's miserable, but we know, we see that he is not miserable. He is powerful, he is good, he is alive, he is healthy. He always shows us that he is self-confident and that he only listens to himself. This is what he does, this is what he says he does all the time, even when he is alone on the island. But here he is described as hesitant and weak. There is contradiction, there is hesitation, there is a lot to be said about Robinson Crusoe actually in this part. In the next chapter, I throw away the husks of corn. This is another stage in the life of Robinson Crusoe. The writer tells us much about the details of his day-to-day existence on the island. Of course, it is natural for him to look for food, to look for shelter, to look for protection, to look for company, to make sure that he is safe and to make sure that he is not hungry. So he records his failed attempt to tame pigeons and his manufacture of candles from goat grease. He tells, so he is one single person and he does all these things. It gives us an idea about how great Robinson is described. Notice, I'm saying how great he is described, not how great he is. Because the writer, Daniel Defoe, has chosen to describe for us Robinson Crusoe in this light. He wants us to know that he is better, he's different, he's superior. Does this remind you of something of what we said about colonialism before? British people in the fiction of the 18th century and the 19th century and part of the 20th century keep telling us that British persons are better, are different, like Rudyard Kipling. The East is East and the West is West and never the twain shall meet, which is a different story. But here you find Robinson Crusoe able to do lots of things, even manufacturing candles in order to see. He tells of his semi-miraculous discovery of barley. it looks like a miracle, something stupendous, dazzling, that he discovers barley having tossed out few husks of corn in a shady area. He is astonished to find healthy barley plants growing there later. And we talked about that. We knew that he interprets this, he understands this as a gift from God for him in order to help him survive on the island. There is a question here. On April the 16th, an earthquake nearly kills him as he is standing in the entrance to his cellar. If you read here, yes, here, an earthquake nearly kills him as he is standing in the entrance to his cellar. He is there on the island, getting ready and preparing himself and sheltering and protecting himself. And there is an earthquake. But he is safe. Again, just like he is saved from shipwreck, he is saved from the earthquake in a very miraculous way again. He is saved from the earthquake, okay? Guess what he thinks of as he faces death in the earthquake? He faces death. There is death quite in front of him. Automatically, we have to think automatically of how Robinson Crusoe behaves. How does he behave? He prays. Whenever he is in trouble, he prays to God. Remember this, memorize it. Whenever Robinson Crusoe is in trouble, whether in an earthquake, facing shipwreck, in a hurricane, when he is ill, when there are cannibals, in any example or in any case or situation of danger to his life, he resorts to God, and then he soon forgets. Chapter 10, it blows a most dreadful hurricane. After the earthquake, there is a hurricane, storm, strong wind, and lots of rains. And after that, he gets ill, you know? So you can read the summary at home. After the earthquake, a hurricane arrives. He takes shelter in his cave, cutting a drain of his house and waiting out the torrential rains. He is worried by the thought that another earthquake would send the overhanging precipice falling into his dwelling, and resolves to move. He decides to move, but he is distracted from this plan by the discovery of gunpowder and other remains from the ship. He spends many days salvaging these remains for more useful items. He goes to the ship and comes back taking from it necessary things. As I told you, in chapter 11 he falls sick because of the cold weather and the hurricane and the earthquake before that, and because of the fact that he is new to the island and he couldn't take care of himself. So for more than a week of rainy weather, Crusoe is seriously ill. The usual question, the general question that we ask is this: what does he do when he is sick? He prays, right? Look at the answer. He prays to God for mercy. He's too weak to get up for water, though he's dying of thirst. He prays to God. In one of his feverish fits, he hallucinates a vision of a man descending from a black cloud on a great flame. The man brandishes a weapon at Crusoe and tells him that all his suffering has not yet brought him to repentance. He sleeps and has a dream, and in the dream there is a man. That man tells Robinson that he is still sinful, that he is still guilty. Guilty of what? Guilty that he has not obeyed his parents and that he has not listened to their advice. And that is why when he gets up from sleep, he tries to benefit by the lesson he gets from the dream, and as he sees death coming over, and he cries over his ingratitude to his parents. He is ingrateful. He is an ungrateful person. His parents have been trying hard and fast to tell him to stay at home and not to go to the sea, and he insisted, adamantly, staunchly insisted, that he would go to the sea. The next day, Crusoe finds he's beginning to recover, and throughout the chapter he is sick and he prays to God. But when he recovers, he comes back to the life of the island. being a commander, being a ruler, being a great person alone on the island, and he automatically forgets about God. Do you understand? He only resorts to God in times of trouble. He struggles with thoughts of self-pity followed by self-reproach. There is self-pity and self-reproach, lashing against himself, taking some tobacco, and his mind is altered, and he opens the Bible. As I said before in the other slide, he goes back to God, opens the Bible, reads a lot of verses, he recovers and kneels to God in gratitude, and he begins a serious reading of the New Testament. He comes to conceive of his isolation on the island as a kind of deliverance from his former guilty existence. He understands that if he is alive on the island, then this is a gift from God, right? And at this point of time, we understand that Robinson Crusoe may repent, or is going to repent, which doesn't happen. Do you understand? Because let us see. What is the title of this chapter? I'm very ill and frightened. I'm very ill and frightened. He gets ill after the earthquake. Ill and conscience-stricken. Let us look at it here. Let us read some parts of it. He falls sick. Went to the wreck, to the ship, in order to get some of the things that could help him stay alive. Okay? Every day to this day I worked on the wreck, and with hard labor I loosened some things to so much with the crowd that the first flowing tide, several cloaks floated out and 2 of the seamen's chests, but the wind blowing from the shore, nothing came. Okay? Very ill. Here we read, on June the 19th, he falls very ill, shivering, as if the weather had been cold, nursed all night, very ill, frightened almost to death. You see? He is frightened almost to death, frightened that he might die. Do you understand? Sad condition, regarding himself on the verge of death. Do you understand? Very ill, frightened, and he prays to God, as we saw in the PowerPoint presentation. Okay? A little better, but under dreadful apprehension of sickness, very bad again, much better. Very violent fit. So oscillation and hesitation even in times of sickness. Better, but then becomes sick. Do you understand? Violent fit of fever again. And once he faces perishing, that is to say dying, disappearing from the island and from life altogether, he gets weak. And to get myself any water or drink, this is what we read in the slide, and he prayed to God again. I didn't know what to say. I lay and I slept and cried, Lord, look upon me. In times of trouble, he prays to God that he might protect him. Pity me, have mercy on me. I suppose I did nothing else for 2 or 3 hours. He says, I think, because he has a fever and he is not conscious, I think that I kept praying for 2 or 3 hours till the fit vanished, till he is better. He's much refreshed. Okay? And then he begins to think of his state of affairs and of the earthquake. Okay? And he tells us of that dream in which he saw someone telling him that he is still guilty. I had, alas, no divine knowledge. I am not religious at all. He says, I began reading from the Bible, but he assures us that he had no religious knowledge at all. What I had received by the good instruction of my father was then worn out by an uninterrupted series for 8 years of seafaring, wickedness, and constant conversation with none but such as were like myself, wicked and profane. He says that he is the one to blame. He is guilty because he didn't listen to his father for 8 years. He only listened to himself, and he considers himself wicked and profane. I don't remember that I had in all that time one thought that so much as tended either to looking upwards towards God, or inwards towards a reflection upon my own ways. He has spent all his life enjoying himself, neither thinking of or praying to God, or even reflecting upon his own condition. Like anybody else, he was very busy enjoying himself and traveling and listening to his own mind. I was all the most hardened, unthinking, wicked creature. He describes himself in this way, not having the least sense. This is after illness, you know. He, after feeling that he is very weak, he arrives at the conclusion that he is a very guilty, unthinking, hardened, and wicked creature, not having the least sense either of the fear of God in danger or of thankfulness to God in deliverance. And that kind of dream pushes him to be a little bit more religious. You know, God or providence, he refers to God sometimes, and at other times he says providence, which is the same. And then he begins to think of his past and to reason. As I said in the PowerPoint, you feel whenever there is illness and sickness and problems, there is God. You understand? And when he is better, he begins to forget. Here, look at this. I had no more sense of God or his judgments. Khalas. He was good. He was very close to God, and he considers himself guilty enough. But now, I had no more sense of God or his judgments, much less of the present affliction of my circumstances being from his hand. He forgot. Do you understand? And then comes back, Lord, what a miserable creature am I. He considers himself foolish, miserable, and that God is just all the time. And now, suddenly he says, let's go back to the journal. Don't worry now about a religion or about prayers. It is better for us to come back to the island, which is much more important to him. As we read in the book that was written by Ian Watt, the most important thing for Robinson Crusoe and for any characters in the fiction of the 18th century was to acquire and to accumulate wealth and money. And every other time we are reminded of how much money they had. So he is very keen on his own survival, and he is also very interested in having more power, more fame, more wealth. Do you understand? It's a very long chapter in which he talks to himself about his relationship to God, and who is that? In the foremost, naturally, it is God that has made all. When he understands that God has been quite merciful to him, and that nothing happens without his knowledge. Look, the capital H means God, automatically. He knows that I'm here and I'm in this dreadful condition, and that is why, see the word God repeated how many times here? Thou, which is God again. Okay, he decides to stay with the Bible for long, and thinks of heaven, thinks of becoming a better person, calling me in the day of trouble. This is what I wanted you to understand about the character of Robinson Crusoe. You will see the word God and the Bible and providence and religion and deliverance repeated several times at the times of trouble. When he has troubles, when he is ill, when he faces danger, when his life is threatened, Robinson Crusoe thinks of no one but God to deliver him from those problems. He believes that he is guilty because he didn't listen to the advice of his father and mother, and that he suffers consequently because of those mistakes that he committed. But what I would like to assure you of again is that he forgets about these things when he becomes a better person. Hesitation, lots of hesitation. We have reached the end of this lecture in which we have taken a number of chapters. I'm waiting for another lecture very soon in which we resume the novel itself and take some more chapters in order to understand the text, inshallah. Thank you very much. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.